All right, welcome back. Today we're going to be going over cables. So now I'm down in room 14 and room 13. This is sort of the room where we keep all the gear for like sound, video, all that stuff, except for lighting. Lighting is a separate room, but all the cables are in this room as well. So I'm going to briefly show you around. A little dark in here. So sort of behind me, right, there's like the amplifiers, all the stuff that goes like on the racks, projection and stuff is over there. Computer towers, right, over here. The beginnings of cables, right, so these are sort of short, cables, different things. Similar to the other side, smaller cables, maybe not as common. Down at the bottom, power strips and IEC. Right, you can tell we use these IECs a lot. This is like the standard for equipment powering. So whenever you're plugging in, say like an amplifier or a power strip that's rack mounted, probably going to be one of those, right? A couple more adapters over there, sort of a workbench specific for repairing cables, stuff like that, testing equipment. Over on the wall we have the rack, right? So now you can see cables get coiled up, slide right on. And you got like sound cables, some data cables, some more sound stuff, and some video stuff, right? It's quite a bit. And in this room, you got more DMX, stage pin, and power. This is mostly lighting, right? Sometimes we grab power from here. Now remember back when I was doing the shop tour and I sort of mentioned extension cords. So now when we're doing extension cords for equipment, right, we're going to use these, right? It's the same plug, right? That same Edison plug, right? But much thicker jacket, right? And I'll go over jacket in a different video. So yeah, maybe I'll start from this side. So you got, like I said, this is sort of all the lighting cable. Down here, you have what's called a breakout. So this is kind of interesting, right? You have one big connector here, and then you have a bunch of smaller cables, right? It's connected here, right? And then it breaks out. So I'll, in between the videos, I'll sort of pause and then put in like pictures and things. But what's cool about this breakout is you run, a big cable, right? Actually, I don't think there's, oh, here it is. So you run this guy, right? It's called Molt, right? Has that receiving connector, really thick jacket and cable. And then inside that one is a bunch of smaller cables. And then when you get to the end, right, you have the male and the female side. But when you get to the end, you could, sort of break out. All right, now this one in particular is for lighting, right? So it has the stage pin connectors. They do make it for, XLR and stuff like that for sound. So yeah, breakouts. All right. Then you have just regular stage pin, right? Pretty standard. Sometimes you're gonna see, this lighting is terrible, this sort of thing called twist lock. Right, so the connector pushes in and twists, and you can't pull it out. Sometimes you'll find that on some lighting equipment. Most of the time you're going to find stage pin. Right, back to the Edison cables, and then here we have DMX. So DMX is 5-pin, right? And this is sort of the cable used to provide data to like your LED lighting and stuff like that. Now back into the 13, start from this side. So you remember this from the other room, but this one is for sound. So similar to how you had the breakout in the last one, but this breakout has all XLR cables. Right? And you can see there's a lot, right? Because for XLR, it's not as heavy of a cable, right? I'll go over like thickness and cable thickness and gauges in a minute. So you have it's called a snake. Snake is for audio, molt is for lighting. So on the top you got some video cables like HDMI, DVI, BNC. Then over here we have Cat5, right? Often known as like Ethernet cable, right? So you're hooking up, say your laptop or your desktop or a game console for the internet, Cat5. Now the actual connector, right, the actual end of this is called RJ45. But the cable itself is category 5 cable. And they do make a couple different categories, like 4, 5, and 6. Cat5 is kind of standard. All right. Some more Cat5. You can tell we use a ton of category 5 cable. So, because we use it for a lot of stuff, mostly networking, right? Because imagine like the haunted hotel is all, it's all connected, right, somehow. So that's how, we use category 5 cable to sort of communicate to one central location. Let's see. Over here we have Speak On. Right, and this a couple different versions. There's NL2 and NL4. They kind of look the same, but you'll notice they're a little different. That's for audio. Then we have XLRs, right? So similar to the DMX, but this is 3 pins. In this you're going to find, to connect some speakers that are not powered, right? So it's separate power. This for like microphones, stuff like that. So going to this sort of table here, the cables you absolutely need to know by just looking at the end, right? DMX, right? Or 5-pin XLR. Right, so you need to know that one. And it's more important that you could identify what the cable is before you sort of know what the cable is used for. But you should know both. They're not terribly complicated. 3-pin XLR, right? Speak On. Right. Edison, right? This is pretty standard. Stage pin. Cat5. PowerCon, right? So this is similar to the speak on type of connector, but on this cable, right? On one end you have Edison, and then you have this connector. So this whole thing is PowerCon. Right, IEC cable. You guys have probably seen this 1,000 times in your life. It's just a generic standard cable for, like, I don't know, whatever like equipment you have in your home theater system, cable boxes, computers, all that shit. That's the cable. And this is how it should be kept, right? And I'll go over coiling in a separate video, but just so you remember that now. And then you have just a power strip. Right? Pretty basic. Now, sort of going a little bit backwards, right? Sort of the breakdown of cables. Right, so this is just like a lamp cord, is what we call it. Right, for obvious reasons, this is the type of cord you'd see, that plugs into a lamp. So you have the copper, right? So it's just copper strands, right? Similar to the aircraft cable I showed you in the rigging section, but you can't use that for power. Right, you got to use copper or aluminum, right? Not steel. So you got the wire, and then you have the sleeve or the jacket. Now, some cables are a lot more fancy, right? So I believe this is sort of a cable from like a small snake. You can kind of see. So there's 3 wires here, and then if you were to cut this back, there'd be that copper piece, the copper portion of it. So it's the wire, and then a jacket, and then all 3 of these are put into another jacket, and then they're bundled into this jacket. So it's jacket inception, but for a reason, right? Like I was mentioning, the breakout and the snake. Right, you could run, one big cable and then separate it at either end instead of running, a dozen smaller cables, right? So that's what that is. And then here I have a couple of samples of connectors. So say, for example, you need to make a custom cable, or if a cable breaks and you got to repair it, you just buy the connector or the ends. And then however it goes together. Sometimes you need a crimping tool. Sometimes you need to solder everything in. Sometimes you just need a little screwdriver. This one is, I believe, a DMX. Yeah, so female DMX. I'll show you this one. This is for male XLR. Right, and it comes with all these pieces, right? These 4 pieces. So you sort of open it all up, and I'll show pictures. But you solder the cables, right? Sleeve it through. Right, sleeve the cable through there. Turn that all up, and then this is sort of strain relief, right? So, imagine you put a connector on, right? And there's a lot of twist right towards the end. So there's usually a little bit of little extra material onto the connector to create strain relief, right? And that helps with preventing the cable from breaking or snapping at the very end, right? It'll damage a little bit further in to give you a little bit more working room. So those are those. I'll do another video on like testing, but at City Tech we have access to this cool device. Right, now this will test a whole bunch of cables. Right, and it'll test to make sure everything's lined up correctly. Right, so say you have to repair a cable, or say for example, somebody steps on a cable, wrongly or whatever, and you will need to check it. So now this category 6 has 8 pairs of cables, right, inside. I'll show a picture. But you can go through, right, you can see those lights. And that means that each, set, right, running through the loop is balanced. Now, say for example, with this cable, right, category 5, if somebody was to mess up the wires when they were crimping it, you'd have, one light on the top be out of line with the bottom. So, but this is pretty cool, and these aren't terribly expensive either. But I'll also show you. Let's see. Do the XLR as well. So you can see 1, 2, 3, right? Because this cable has 3 pins, so after that it's not gonna do anything, right? 3, 2, 1. And no matter how good you are, right, at like repairing cables or putting cables together, you always just want to check it, right? I mean, the peace of mind of just knowing that the thing that you worked on is good to go. This is this one's more for like our industry. Then you have the multimeters. These are like all over the place. Hey, look at that, it works. But sometimes, depending on the type of job you're doing, you'll actually need to test voltage and not just continuity, right? Continuity is this one.